So we are here today to talk about Gen Z. These renters have developed high expectations at every stage of the resident life cycle, like instant service, intuitive tech, and an authentic community. As a result, us leaders are here because we've got to blend the tech with these new management models, these new elevated amenities, these new tech-forward designs that they're living in. So we're going to talk about how this next generation is shaping our industry for years to come. So to kind of give you a level set on the generation, we're talking about the demographic that's about 14 to 29 years old now. So they're about 71% of or 71 million of our population, 20% of our population, and that's making up 49% of our renters today. So we are living this right now. So this panel is going to dive into how they're influencing marketing, leasing, the community, and operations from inside and out. So we'll get started. We'll dive into the first question. We're going to do your introductions. We won't dive in just yet. So let's introduce each of you, your title, where you're from, your name, and how has Gen Z impacted you?
Okay. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us on, is this the last session of the day? So last one, best one we're going to try to go for. I'm kidding. I'm Erica White. I'm Senior Vice President of Technology and Strategic Initiatives at Article Student Living. We are a student housing owner-operator based out of Chicago, Illinois. I'm not from Chicago. You could probably hear it in my accent. I actually live in Atlanta, Georgia. I oversee everything from our IT and hardware, traditionally from corporate and our property teams, also data analytics, and then all systems, third-party integrations, and then property technology as well. So how has a Gen Z influenced me? Well, I am a mom of a 13-year-old, so we're coming into that age, and so learning all the things that way as well. But that's the generation I serve in student housing. So I have the privilege of not having the same day twice, I feel like. So lots of thoughts, lots of things to uncover in this session. I'm excited. Pass it to you, Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Meshiko. I am the co-founder and chief growth officer of a company called Leap. We're one of the largest tenant default insurance companies probably in the world. We work across student housing, purpose-built student housing, single-family homes, built-to-rent, and conventional multifamily housing. We work with about 5 million homes across the U.S. How did Gen Z affect me? I would say like my swag. I don't have any swag here because we don't have a booth, but our socks say all riz, no risk.
Rhythm, that's a good one.
That's definitely a Gen Z tagline, right? Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last session. I'll concur that we're happy to have you here. My name is Heidi Jehlicka. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for the Bainbridge companies. We're based out of Wellington, Florida. Owner, operator, developer, third-party manager, just under 20,000 units. I oversee corporate marketing and the property or community marketing for the organization. And the way I'm also raising Gen Zers, so I get the privilege of interacting with them every day in my personal life, but of course, as a marketer, I have to figure out how to speak their language and meet them where they are so that they make a buying decision to be with us.
And I'm Ashley Sinclair. I'm the Executive Vice President of Village Green Management. We are strictly third party. I, similar to Heidi, deal with our corporate marketing and branding as well as the property performance and the ROI in terms of how we position the assets. Today, I am not raising Gen Z, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but I am hiring them and I am renting to them. So that's my exposure right there, which kindly I would say is probably enough exposure.
I feel like you get the full journey on stage here, kind of passing through.
Well, let's dive into where it all starts. It starts in student housing. So how has the student housing experience shaped what they expect from multifamily today?
Yeah, I think in student, they're coming to multifamily well-trained. They're coming to the table, well-experienced in boutique style living. They are amenity rich. They want to have quick, fast service. They almost don't want to talk to you at all. I think some of the most recent surveys, I'm looking at you, Whitney, you talk about this one all the time, but a lot of the conversations that we see is like, we have to build a platform where if they want to engage with us, we allow that. And if they don't, we can be as frictionless and mobile as possible. And I think having that agility and being flexible in that is what has kind of set everyone up for success or disappointment, either way that you're looking at it. But I think as they come through that kind of funnel, they're getting these experiences from a university, whether it's mobile access, quick, fast interaction. They're, doing Uber Eats. They're, making sure they're getting orders. They want same day fast service. So they're expecting that. And so when they kind of leave our transition after their time with us at Student, they are expecting that same level of high touch, but also almost less interaction at other properties and companies. So well-trained, boutique style, interacting with them in a way that they want to interact with you without being too salesy.
Yeah, I mean, what we see on the student side is, most of the students that are living in purpose-built student housing, I wouldn't say most, 50% of the students today are their first apartment is nicer than the home that they actually grew up in. So they come into this amenity-rich, awesome experience community that's brand new and has all the bells and whistles. Meanwhile, students have no credit and have no income. So, they come in and they get, I don't want to say spoiled, but they get access to this amazing living experience. And then they leave, right? And they move to either a tertiary city or a major metro. If you move to where I lived in New York City, you go from this like amazing party high rise that does foam parties and has a huge football screen on the roof to living in East Harlem in a 300 square foot walk-up studio. So very big, different experience, and they get let down. I mean, that's just the nature. Even if they're moving to the tertiary cities, in even some of the best A-class buildings, it has not caught up from a capital expenditure or what the amenities have experienced in multifamily and in traditional multifamily. That's what we see.
So we'll say that they're going to leave the resort and then they're going to move to reality. Because
I'm the
that's
bummer.
essentially
I'm the
It's
bummer.
not all inclusive
They get to
anymore.
me and I bum them out.
we get to deliver.
We're the surprise and delight.
Maybe not the pool party. Well, we do pool parties, but it's not the foam party. I think there's the initial letdown, or not necessarily letdown, but the hit of reality that they can't afford that luxury A++ style that they're just coming from in student housing, because again, mom and dad probably took care of that rent, and now their affordability is a shocker. And then they're going to even be more shocked when you tell them that there are additional things that they have to pay for that they didn't have to pay for where they lived before. And so now we've got sticker shock, we've got product shock, we've got all kinds of shock going on. But what they also learn from you, so thank you for doing all of those wonderful things for them, is they want nothing that has friction. Everything needs to work smoothly. So when looking at delivering to the Gen Z renter, is everything to them is technology based. They've never lived in a world without technology. So you have to have it, but the biggest pain point for them is when it breaks. And that is you can't have that. So that is the expectation, hospitality level service. And then I'm definitely gonna turn that over to you because I know there's a lot more. But transparency is also the biggest thing. They never want to feel like what you're telling me, I have to go and decipher. Like, just give me the facts. Tell me exactly what it is, and transparency-free conversations. And we'll talk more about AI and all of that as our additional questions come about.
So kind of to piggyback as they get through the journey, like I said, I'm the bummer when they get to me and it's real life. And we're third party, so we have some really, really beautiful buildings, A+ and great locations, and we have some vintage retro products as well, right? But I would say the biggest thing we're experiencing on our end is how they're looking for their apartment. where some of you, if you did ever search or went to apartments.com or even took it to a Google search, you might not have been as choosy. You might have had some specifics you were looking for. Now, all of you, I'm sure if you've been on Google, you see that AI summary. That's huge. So the biggest kind of undertaking, or our first step in this appeal to Gen Z, was to say everything that you've heard, and then how do we fit that when we don't own a building and we can't always infuse cool tech or cool amenities. So the biggest thing is kind of adding the FAQ pages to our website. That's how Google is going to grab that information and allow you to summarize. And, you know, I don't want to say lazy. I think we agreed efficiency was probably the best term. But we are seeing that this group knows they have options, they're tech savvy, and they want quick results. So in terms of your property and your marketing and your pricing, all that still very much matters, but how they're discovering it, their first introduction to you, and that seamless, frictionless idea is going to be extremely important.
Excellent. So now we see their expectations have shifted. Let's talk about the biggest shifts you're seeing on the marketing and leasing side, how they discover and how they evaluate their new apartment home. How are you adapting?
Yeah, I think for us, I think static marketing doesn't play as much of a part as maybe that it used to. I joke, and this will probably date me, but we know when I first started out in student housing, it used to be a requirement. We had to give out 1,000 flyers per day. Like requirement, we don't know where that number came from, why it was 1,000, but apparently 1,000 was going to get you leases. And so we took that very seriously. And I think now it's transitioned. Yes, ILSs are still very important, but from student, it's also about the social aspect. They want to see the cool TikTok videos. They want to be fed this lifestyle and this experience and this vibe that they get for your property. It's not just about, you know, hey, we've got this technology, this is great. It's what are they going to do with that experience, and what kind of lifestyle is going to differentiate from one property to the next. And I think that is what's been a big shift is static marketing doesn't have as much. There's so much on, we talk a lot about referrals and things like that, but it is just as much as storytelling and, you know, getting real experience from others, and they talk. I mean, you're not just leasing, you think you're leasing one bed, but that's potentially a 4-bedroom suite if they bring people in. So I think that marketing has shifted in that way, and, you know, getting preferences, it's really all about being always on, I would say. You know, we want to make sure that they can see our properties, whether it's, you know, self-guided touring or seeing our website. It's really time is currency for us. So if they're spending more time on our websites, if they're spending more time engaging with us or an AI chatbot, that is where we're seeing some of that return come through.
I was just going to say, like, the consumption of the funnel has like drastically changed for the new generation of renter. You know, I always say find your Dory. Dory has a memory of 4 seconds or something like that. And that's really what you have, because you have a huge fragmentation of discovery. You have Gen Z always used to having a supercomputer in their pocket. They're mobile first and mobile only, pretty much. So, you know, whether that's AI, search, marketing, digital touring, or, you know, virtual touring, they're all kind of aligned, and there is no kind of consistent journey on how they're finding their next home or their first home usually. The other thing is you have to be honest with them. I mean, they do not like a bait and switch. You know, you advertise, you know, something that's not real, or, you know, I see a lot of these new dev and student that does, like, they advertise all these great mocks and everything, and when it comes down to it, they don't finish on time, and then they put them in hotels for, you know, before they finish until they have their CO. It is.
What do you mean? I've never.
Yeah, I know you guys have all
Never
done
happened to
that,
me.
Never
and it is a very bad experience. It's a very bad experience for them, and they do not like that. That could ruin them ever renting with you ever again. So
And they don't want to be too sold to either. I think that you got to like strike that balance.
So imagine this group is the largest group that you're actually renting to, and that is the reality. So Gen Z makes up the largest population that you're renting to, and they use social media as a search engine. Now, doesn't that blow your mind? Yes, they go to TikTok. Yes, they go to Instagram as a search engine to find out where they're going to live. So I guess my recommendation is they don't follow traditional they don't follow the traditional marketing funnel. So they're not coming to you uneducated. They're almost not a top of funnel lead anymore. They're watching 100 videos, and turn over social media to your on-site teams and let them show what a day in the life is like, and let it be real and let it be authentic, because that's what they're expecting to get. They want authentic experiences, authentic interactions with the on-site team, and it is okay for them to see something that you would not pay a professional photographer to shoot or a professional videographer to video. Turn it over, let it happen naturally, because then their trust in your community is going to just get higher and higher and higher. And that's ultimately where they're at, is when they trust and they believe that it is an authentic experience, they are much more likely to come and actually tour you and then really experience you firsthand. So turn over social media, don't be afraid of it. The reward is definitely greater than the risk.
Absolutely. I would add, Adam mentioned the transparency. This generation has less financial stability than the generations beforehand. They're coming out with extreme debt in some cases. There was the YOLO economy is what they're referencing. And, mother down here in the pink, Erica, is training my renter to come out and have very, very high standards, but they can't afford it. So that transparency, which most of us, if you're in the industry, you're seeing that forced in terms of fees and what you are charging, what you will charge. So that's kind of organically happening for them. But in addition to that, they are used to this. And they're not afraid to doom scroll, to search, to put in the time to make sure that they can live a lifestyle that they desire, or as close to it as they can. Again, coming from mother down there, who I love so much. But no, when they get to me and Heidi, it's exactly what she said. Also the reviews. Don't be afraid of bad reviews. This generation knows that it's not perfect. So if they only see amazing 5-star reviews, they think you're up to something. Yeah, so I would tell you guys to spend some time when something bad happens on a review, whether you're a client in the audience and you own real estate and you work with a management company, owner, operator, or third party, whatever your position may be. A bad review to Gen Z, it's about the recovery. What did the management company or property manager, whoever was involved, how did they solve for it? That's going to play a huge role. So I would say shift that idea from I have to have this perfect online reputation to the idea of it doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to show resolution. It needs to show that you were nimble and that you were able to have empathy and understand the issue. The other thing on social, and you're absolutely right, authentic experience via social media. For a long time, we were all hiring ad agencies that were wildly expensive, and no offense to anybody who works at one, because I did too, that was posting beautiful content and gorgeous photos. They're clicking the tab to see what you're tagged in. They want to know what your residents and prospects are actually experiencing from their seat. So aligned with what she said, I would also say make sure that the residents are attempting to show their lifestyle, include their pets, things of that nature will also go far in terms of their journey.
Excellent. And so we've talked about technology is kind of a given for these guys and Gen Z. So what can we do to differentiate ourselves? What's that experiential moment, a digital touch point? What do we need to do in the markets?
Yeah, I think, how much time do we have? This is like what I love to chat about. No, I think, coming from, in student housing specifically, technology is a given. It's not just about the cool, flashy tech. And I think that is a lot of what our industry is used to is like, hey, let's throw out this really cool idea. And some are really great. But I think for this generation specifically, they really care an invisible solution that works and is reliable and steady. They are going to want and wish for that over something flashy and cool, because it can be the most cost efficient, most streamlined. It can, be amazing, but that one time it doesn't work, you've broken trust. And when you break trust with this generation, then anything that you're trying to accomplish going forward, you almost have to buy that trust back or win that trust back. And so I think it's not so much about stacking solutions, but looking at interoperability and how that interacts with them as they're experiencing your community. We understand we're serving two very different demographics. We have our students and we also have our guarantors. So creating an environment where they can kind of pick that lane and decide how they want to experience your community, I think is super important. Making sure you have reliable internet is number one, so they can doom scroll 100%, and making sure that you are connected and future-proofing as much as possible. So I think when we're looking at solutions at Article specifically, it's how can this outlast the next trend? How can we build something that we're not throwing a bunch of middleware in to make it work? You know, we know technology shifts, so how can we have a really good partner or a really good platform to make interoperability a thing? Because I think a lot of times our industry confuses integration with interoperability. You can have an integration, systems can sync, things can work, but if it doesn't function the way that you operate, it's noise.
Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback on that. You know, I tend to think we work pretty heavily in student housing, and I tend to think our integration was best in class.
Big fan.
Biasly, because I did it. But you know, most integrations out there today with these legacy systems are typically they pull some data via an API, they do something in a point solution, and then they may or may not push something back. You know, I think we've changed that model, especially with Entrata. We have built a native function in Entrata with them, with their homebody product this year, which is a first-to-market product. And, you know, we want to give all people, all renters, really just optionality and make it really, really easy for them natively in the flow. I think optionality is key, you know, out there. I mean, even our product, it's probably the most unsexy product out there, right? Like, do I want to use a guarantor, which is one of Erica's clients or probably one of your clients, or do I want to use, you know, this alternative? A lot of Gen Z, they want to do things on their own. They may not have a parent that can qualify for their lease. They may be a first generation college student, where they took out student loans. Around 80% of our client base is Gen Z. We're at the highest amount of credit card debt out there today, you know, from a overall debt perspective, and that's not even measuring some of the digital credit out there, so Afterpay, Klarna, et cetera. So, you know, rent has become, in our opinion, more unaffordable and less obtainable for this generation. This is the renter generation, not the American dream generation. I think that goes two ways. I think one, it becomes unaffordable, but I also think Gen Z really wants optionality, right? This is that next generation renter. They want flexibility, they want optionality. So, you know, I think that's key when it comes to technology.
So on the technology side, the one thing about Gen Z is technology isn't sexy to them, it's expected. So think about advertising and how you're marketing your communities. What do you have is listed on your amenity list. So I'm not at all suggesting that you remove technology, because you have definitely more than just Gen Z that's going to live at your communities, but they really expect that you have keyless entry. They really expect that you have control access entry points. And boy, let me tell you what's going to happen when it doesn't work. They're the first person that's going to go to your online ratings and reviews, and then you're going to have to figure out how you fix that. So it isn't, again, it's not a sexy thing for them. It's an expected thing for them. So you do need it, but it needs to work. And the other thing to speak about with them is they have zero patience. So when they want to interact with a human, which that is another thing about Gen Z, is they're okay with you having AI on your websites, answering your phones, taking your work orders, doing all of those things. They're not like most of us in the room. I don't know how many Gen Zers we have in here. They're okay talking to AI. They'll interact with it. They don't mind it. But when they want to talk to the human, they want to push a button, and now the human is there right now. So that is the other thing we have to just be very mindful of, is all the technology and the AI that we have available to us is that handoff to get to a human specifically for this demographic and this generation. Is we have to have somebody to answer the phone.
I would suggest, because of everything that they've stated, which I'm now grateful I'm not raising a Gen Zer, no offense, no, is, you know, the idea that regardless of, well, the topic is Gen Z, me and Heidi are renting to all sorts, and Heidi alluded to, she's also working with the guarantors that usually are in a different bucket. So sometimes it's as simple as the opt-in and the ask, whether that's on your website and they can opt into a full digital experience, knowing that at any point, if they have additional questions, concerns, they can opt out and speak to a person or AI. So for anybody who might be in the audience feeling a little overwhelmed, like, well, where would I start with this? Is just that idea of options. I think all of us in the room sometimes don't feel like talking to anyone until that robot gives you the same answer that is not helpful. And if you're like me, you just hold zero, hope for the best. But just making sure that there is options and flexibility within how you're serving that prospect or resident. And honestly, it can be surprising. Sometimes it's not just Gen Z who has some of these characteristics. Sometimes it's my boomers and my empty nesters who they're just as fired up. So I think that would be, you know, my advice too, is just the way you interact, it has to have flexibility. There can be a tech stack there, or it can just be a person who's readily available, or it can be somebody texting from an office phone. So
one thing I wanted to add just from hearing you all jump in is I love that you guys mentioned a lot about optionality, and it doesn't have to be, like, to your point, flashy tech, because that they're used to that. I think to all of your points on optionality, they love to be incentivized for doing what they're supposed to do, right? So like credit reporting is huge now in student, which when I was a student, I didn't care. I was like, where's the next party? What are we doing? What's happening? But I think now in this generation, they want options to incentivize them, whether it's, you know, leaving a review, whether it's, you know, having that option of paying their rent on time. They want credit for that. They want to show that they have that. And so giving options like that and layering that in as an amenity as well is important.
Great. I'm going to flip it on you guys. We'll start Ashley and go our way down this time.
I've been feeding off their answers the whole time.
We'll flip the order.
Give us a chance.
So what is one pain point that this Gen Z renter has that they have zero patience for? We covered some of that. And how are you going to solve for it differently?
I think the biggest pain point in my experience is going to be the financial health. You know, I think renting on the onset is one thing. I think at the renewal with potential increase or not much done to the property in terms of their expectations is going to be something that for most of us we were taught, or I might be going on a limb, that like job hopping as an example, that wasn't a good thing on a resume. Moving in and moving out, like, oh, who wants to deal with that, right? Who wants to pack all this stuff? This group is a little more ambitious in that arena. They, again, know they have options. They know they have choices. So I would say the quickest thing is going to be the experience throughout the property and building that relationship, even if it is a little more digital than we're used to understand that we are there to support them, and then hopefully can somewhat have a comprehension in terms of, are they using flex pay? Did they use a jetty or like scenario for a security deposit? What sort of increase can they take? So that way we're aligning expectations, because that turnover is real with them in terms of their ability to quickly give that notice and find the next option who's offering the incentive down the street.
Yeah, I'll agree. We don't seem to paint Gen Z in a very pretty light, but there are some pretty things, and they're coming, so hang on. But to your point, zero patience. I think we've said that a couple of times. They don't have a lot of patience when it comes to things that they do not believe to be truthful. So transparency is super important. The other expectation or pain zero patience that they have is if you don't have a sense of community at your community. They're definitely looking for that. They want to interact with their fellow residents around the community. Now remember, they've come from student housing where there was a party every day. They want that same experience, although it doesn't have to be at that same level. So ensuring that you're bringing people together, they will attend. They're going to attend the events. And then the last thing really is we've talked about this forever and ever and ever, is the renter who moves for the best concession in the market. This is that renter. They're going to just keep moving, and they're going to keep moving. So you've already said at renewal, if you don't do something for them to stay and stick, they're just going to move to the next concession that they find. They're okay with doing that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say immediate response. Like they're okay with a response, like even if it's we'll get back to you within 6 hours or 4 hours. But as long as you have some solution to let them know that you've taken that in, you're looking at it, and you're going to work on it, is what they're looking for. They also want the ability to, if they do pick up the phone, they want the ability to speak to someone. And I would say that is critical. Like they have no patience. Again, their attention span is 4 seconds. So, that is really important. On the other aspect of things, I would say they're demanding more. So they're very demanding. Can you imagine what the next generation is going to be from a demand standpoint? I mean, they're very, very demanding.
Right.
Very, very, very demanding. And I would say, I heard us talk about renewals and retention. This generation there's an affordability crisis out there, right? And rents have, depending on where you are, absorption and rents are changing in the market. But in general, rents have gone up significantly and pay has not. So, the affordability aspect is real. And this is what did you call it? The YOLO generation?
YOLO economy.
YOLO
You only live
economy.
once, spend it.
We are in Vegas.
Bring back YOLO. We're saying it again. It's back. 100%.
But that's what they are, right? And if they're used to amenities like, a deposit alternative or flexing their move-in costs or flexing their rent on a monthly basis, if you change that, or if management changes and they don't offer that and they don't have that service anymore, they will leave. I mean, they just will leave. They cannot afford, just even the normal rent increases. So I would say like those amenities, even though they're financial, are becoming more and more important on a day-to-day basis, for this next generation of renters.
I agree with this whole group. I think lack of responsiveness, they're okay with slower resolution times as long as that you can point them in the right direction and let them know, hey, we did receive your request. Here's what we're planning to do about it. But it can't be too cookie cutter. They do not want like an automated response that puts them in the same category as everyone else. So I think that was an approach that we really took seriously when we were looking at AI solutions. We were looking at the responses, and I mean, crazy things would come up that you wouldn't even think about. We had a resident, and maybe I'm overhearing on this, but we had a resident who had put in a work order, and maintenance came in, did the work order. They got an automatic email that said, like, your work order's been complete. And they're like, what are you talking about? My garbage disposal is still broken. And we were very confused by that. But what had happened is that there was the guarantor who had a apartment in Miami, close to where we were, but they also used a similar resident portal. And so it was connecting. And so instead of it being the dad's apartment complex that he was putting in the work order, it was going to the student's side. And the student didn't have an issue. So they were very confused. So just being intentional with your responses, your connectivity, how your systems are operating, not just, a one-stop shop solution that's blanketing those things. Know how your, AI chatbots or things like that are interacting, because that will turn them off immediately. If they don't feel like they have a connection, if they can't, subscribe to wellness. This group is very intrigued by wellness, work-life integration and balance, and being able to have natural light in their units. They are very concerned with those items. And so when you're not offering those things, I think it's going to create that friction. It's going to break that trust, and they're not going to want to be a part of it. So I say being really in tune with your solutions that you're deploying and how you respond is important.
So all these high expectations, there's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of change coming our way. This can start sounding really expensive to clients and operators. So what is something we can do? What's nimble, what's creative, that keeps the offerings fresh, keeps it relevant without constant reinvestment? Ashley?
So because, again, third party, some of our clients are very open to infusing capital. Some aren't in that situation given the economy that we're all in right now. So I would say that being intentional with kind of low dollars. So things like, whether it's digital classes, whether it's paying subscriptions, you can do small things to appeal to this group that you could consider an amenity. so to speak, but you're not actually adding a physical space. You're not, doing FF&E or things of that nature. Now, obviously, if you can do it and it makes good sense and the ROI is there, that's the best bet. It helps with your marketing, refreshing everything. If you aren't in that scenario, even something as small as allowing the resident to opt into the credit bureau and we report the rent, which will help them. Things like the app Minted, I think there's a few out there now that helps them with their subscriptions, showing them where they are spending their dollars. So small things like that you can partner with and bring forward. Very simple to do, easy to market and partner and brand with. So that would be my suggestion.
So I said there was something positive coming about this generation, and that is that they believe that old is new again. That's a positive thing, right? They like thrifting, they like antiques, they like to buy reused clothing. They are good and okay with a mixed match furniture in their apartment themselves. So one of the suggestions that would really be cost effective in our spaces and really more resident activations is having a knitting class, having a quilting class. I know it sounds crazy, but they love this. I feel really bad for those of us who loved Joann Fabrics and now they're gone because this generation wants them back. So who knows, maybe Joann Fabrics will make a comeback just because of this generation. But think things like how to teach them how to refurbish a dresser or a nightstand could be a really fun resident activation, and they would love it. It's going to give them that sense of community, and it's going to make something old new again. I think that's a really great quality of this generation.
I would just say, you don't have to spend a bunch of CapEx to please this generation renter, right? You can really just improve the experience. So if you think about, I'm a service provider, so it's a little different. I have to spend the money, but there's plenty of things you can do, from programming to just messaging to SOPs to centralization, that I've seen done that just makes resident life experience easier. And that's really what they want. I know Erica's probably about to talk about, I think, invisible tech. And it's the things they don't see that just feel seamless and connected that make their experience better, which is not that expensive to do. It requires work, it requires, some strategy, and it requires SOPs and so forth. But from an expense standpoint and a CapEx standpoint, it's not that expensive, and it can mean all the world of a difference.
Totally. Now I am going to talk about invisible tech, I think. No, I'm just kidding. I think, for us, it's looking at the data and being able to pivot quickly. And so what is your behavioral data telling you? And how can you leverage your resident sentiment and solve for those items? And so when we were deploying our chatbots, or we were looking, a lot of it came through that our residents just wanted clear communication. They're getting bombarded from TikTok. They're getting bombarded from Reddit. All over the place. So having a clean one-stop shop for their moving guide was huge, which doesn't seem like it's a heavy lift, but we decided, hey, we're going to put all of our moving guides. It's going to have all of our third-party, providers, all of our partners that we utilize, anyone that touches our resident. We're going to upload that to their resident portal so they can see that at any time, and they can come to it whenever they need to. They know how to get to that information. So you don't have to, I hate that saying, boil the ocean, if you will, but look at your sentiment, see what it's telling you. And I think, being strategic behind it, I loved the point that was made about, looking at your amenity space and not throwing a ton of CapEx, but if we're seeing that lounges aren't being utilized, can you create a content creator space? Can you make this a little more vibey? So where people want to come in and maybe film a cool TikTok or film a podcast or do things like that. So there's low effort ways that you can do those items. And I think one that was really successful for us was really streamlining and automating high touch point things from a communication standpoint, not over saturating them with, not need to know information, but pertinent information. They could get to it and they could get it quick and they could trust it. That was big for us.
All right, let's move to a lightning round. Let's finish this sentence. In 5 years, Gen Z will choose where to live, less on blank and more on blank.
Less on amenity stack, more on lifestyle and vibes.
Less on the sizzle, more on the steak.
Less on the apartment, more on the community.
Agree. I love that.
Well, we have a little bit of time. Do you guys want to go through some of your final thoughts, maybe some points we didn't cover that you thought were important to talk about with Gen Z and to help us prepare for these upcoming years?
The only other last just comment is based on their financial well-being or lack thereof and the debt that they have, they're going to be a renter for a very long time, and they actually see it as a lifestyle choice, not so much as previous generations where they didn't want to mow the lawn and they didn't want that headache. They really see renting as a financially smart decision. So I think that that is going to help us understand that they're going to be with us for a long time. And for those of us, including myself, that look at the reasons for not renting report, it should less be, or move outs, it shouldn't be because they're buying a home. So this should decrease, which is going to be favorable for all of us.
Well, thank you, panel. This was a great wide range of discussion, and we appreciate your knowledge and your participation. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.